Hello Year 4, I hope you're all okay. Miss Cullen here, hope you're having a good day. I'm here today to teach you your first lesson of the new topic. So our new topic this term is, drumroll please, Ancient Egypt. This is a really fantastic topic and I think you're really going to enjoy learning all about the ancient Egyptians. So the first thing I would like you to do is have a look at these key words for the topic. So some of them you might recognise by the pictures, or some of them you might think, oh, I knew that was something to do with ancient Egypt, but I didn't actually know what it was called. So I want you to pause the video and just have a little think about whether you recognise any of those things or any of the words. And then when you're ready, come back. So we're going to have a look now at these pictures, which are some significant things from ancient Egypt. So as you can see in the top corner here, we've got a little teddy bear, and he's there because if you haven't got anyone to talk to at home because they might be busy or working and doing different things, you can grab yourself a teddy or something and talk to your teddy. So I want you to have a look at these pictures, pause the video, think about what they might be, and then come back when you're ready. So you had a good look at those pictures. Some of them you might think straight away, like our pyramids. They're quite popular, aren't they, for Egypt? So they are our pyramids. And then we've got our Sphinx that some of you may have heard of before, or even if you've been lucky enough to visit Egypt, you may have even seen it. So this one over here is our River Nile. So you can see our River Nile there. So we're going to learn more about the River Nile today. This one here is a picture of a pharaoh. Then we've got our hieroglyphics, which we'll find out more during the term. Then this one you might have seen pictures of before. So this is a sarcophagus, which is a type of kind of posh coffin, and obviously inside there is our mummy, so we'll find out more about those. And then our final one down here, which we'll learn about more today, is papyrus. So I want you to have a little think about what you think papyrus might be. So the first thing I want you to do now is watch the video. So the link is on the class story. So have a little look at this video, and as you watch it, I want you to pay close attention and make some notes about some of the kind of the important things that you notice about ancient Egypt. So watch the video, make some small notes, and then when you're ready, come back to carry on with our lesson today. So I hope you enjoyed watching that video. I thought it was really interesting and I managed to get some facts from that too. So before we think about what ancient Egypt was like, we want to think about when it was in relation to other things we've learnt about. So have a look at these pictures. What do you think those pictures represent? What kind of time periods that we've kind of learnt in either year 4 or year 3? Have a little think, and I want you to think what they are and then come back to me and I'll reveal them, and then we're going to order them. So you should have noticed that we've got Stonehenge here to represent our Stone Age period. Then we've got our ancient Egypt, then our Romans, and then finally down here we've got our Vikings. So can you pause the video for me? And I want you to think about which of those time periods was the earliest and which was the most recent. So order them from longest ago to the most recent, and then come back. So let's see how you got on. So the first one is our Stone Age period. Then it was the ancient Egyptians, then our Romans, and then our Vikings. So our Vikings were the most recent time period. So a little extra thing, if you want to do it as a little extra challenge, can you find out when each of those time periods were and maybe plot them on a timeline, but that's only a little extra challenge if you want it. So ancient Egypt was a time period that occurred 5,000 years ago, and that was about 3,000 years before the birth of Christ, so before Jesus was born. I want you to have a little think, maybe tell your teddy bear, what are the initials we use to show time before the birth of Christ? So before Jesus was born, what initials do we use to show that? So tell your teddy, then come back. So you should have remembered that we use BC, which means before Christ, or BCE, which means before the Common Era. So thumbs up if you remembered that one. So we've thought about when ancient Egypt happened, but now I want to think about where ancient Egypt actually is. So this picture here is our globe, our map of the world. And if you look, we've got all our continents and our seas here. And ancient Egypt is in Africa. Okay, and then if we zoom in on Africa, you can see that Egypt is in our northeastern corner of Africa. So, what do you think the climate is like? So have a look at those pictures that I put on there, and I want you to think what the climate's like, so what the weather was like in ancient Egypt. Pause the video, have a think, tell your teddy, and then you can play when you're ready. So, first of all, we probably think, oh, it's probably hot all year round. They kind of have the hot sun because we've got the deserts there. So, really, in the south of Egypt, they did have very hot summers and very mild winters. But in the north, they had those hot summers and those mild winters, but they also had very humid and rainy springs. Okay, so slightly different in the north there to the south. And that climate is reflected in the clothes that they used to wear. So they used to wear robes which would have been made from linen. So linen must be a nice cool material for them to wear in the hot weather. And some people, men and women, used to wear wigs, not just for kind of decorative uses, but also to protect their head from the sun. So there we go, they didn't wear hats, they wore wigs to protect their heads. So I mentioned before in those initial pictures that we were going to look into the River Nile into more detail. So the River Nile is about 6,670 kilometres or 4,160 miles in length, and it's the longest river in Africa, but also the longest in the world. So it actually takes up, it's not just found in Egypt because it is so long. So what I would like you to do is pause the video and have a look at these pictures that I've put around our picture of the River Nile here, and I want you to tell someone or your teddy, if there's no one available, why you think the River Nile is so important during ancient Egypt. So use those pictures to help you and then come back when you're ready. So how did you get on? Our first picture, we've got this glass of water. So not only did they use the water for drinking, but the water was very important for their crops because obviously they used to grow a lot of their crops and they needed the water to help those. Then we've got our fish. So obviously they used to go fishing as a sport, but then they'd use the fish as food as well. Then we've got, don't know if you can see actually, but if we look closely along the edge of the river, there are some reeds. Okay, so those reeds are what we use, or what they used to create paper, and that paper is the papyrus paper. So some of you might have noticed that from the video you watched, but I thought that was really interesting that those reeds grew on the River Nile and that's what they used to create their paper. Then we've got this one down here. So this is representing our land, and the land on the outs, kind of the edges of the River Nile, was very good for growing crops because it had very fertile soil, so they could produce some really good crops. Then finally, down here we've got our boat, and they would obviously use the River Nile for transportation, so they would use it to get from different places within Egypt, or to kind of transport different things to and from Egypt. So I want you to think, what other facts did you find out about ancient Egypt? So from that video that you watched, what else did you find out? And have a little look at your notes, and I've got some pictures here of some extra things which I thought were quite interesting from that video, and just some extra little things that you might not know already. So if we look at this picture, first of all, so that is our papyrus paper that we spoke about being made with the reeds from the River Nile. Then we've got our hieroglyphics here, and I wonder if anyone can remember from the video what these symbols, these hieroglyphs, spelt out. Give you 5 seconds to see if you can remember. So in the video he told us that this word was cat, so well done if you got that. Then our picture here, wonder if you can remember what that one is. So somewhere where our food would have been stored if we lived in ancient Egypt. So it was a hole in the ground which acted as a fridge. So I wonder who fancies putting all their food underground to be kind of keep it cool. Let's have a look at this one. So we mentioned before, didn't we, about the wigs and how men and women used to wear the wigs for keeping themselves cool and protecting their heads from the heat of that hot sun, because it would have been very, very hot, especially at the height of day. So they used to wear the wigs, and they had lots of jewellery. So both, again, men and women would have worn lots of jewellery, and it would often be symbolic of something or act as good luck charms. So it wasn't just to look pretty, they kind of had reasonings behind the jewellery that they wore. This one down here, so they, in ancient Egypt, they would have entertained themselves by playing and listening to music. So if you can see, we've got harps or a lyre, which is kind of like a type of string instrument here. So they would use those musical instruments as part of entertainment, as well as kind of playing different games and things. This was a key element of their lives in ancient Egypt. And then finally, I want you to look at our pyramids. So pyramids, we might think, oh, they're just there to look cool. But they actually had a big purpose. I wonder if anyone got that from the video. So see if you can have a look at your notes that you made and have to think, why are pyramids so important to the ancient Egyptians? So they were made from limestone, a type of stone that they used to build the pyramids, and they were burial chambers or kind of tombs for mainly important people like pharaohs or queens. And they used the example in the video, didn't they, of kind of Westminster Abbey, and how we're similar in that way of how we have those tombs for the important people within our country too. So well done if you found those out. You might have even got more than me as well, so well done. So thinking about all those things we've learnt, and there was a lot there that we've found out about ancient Egypt already, I want you to have a look at this picture, and there are 10 errors in the picture, and I want you to see if you can find all the errors. So pause the video, have a little look, and then come back and we'll see if we found them all. So I've got the picture up here again. So our first error, if we look at number 1 at the top. So although they were really good architects, they were really good at building things, they didn't build towers or temples with domed roofs. So I don't know if you can see over here, there's a domed roof. So they didn't build buildings like that. Most of their buildings, their greatest buildings, were the pyramids. And obviously they were made using blocks of stones, and they definitely didn't have domed roofs, did they? So that's our first one. Our second one over here is that ancient Egypt was ruled by a king or a pharaoh, and he wore an elaborate headdress rather than a crown. So you would have had to look really, really, really closely, and he, as the king there, was wearing a crown which they didn't wear. Okay, so they used to wear a headdress, which can be seen over here. I don't know if you can see him there. If we go back to the picture there, can you see he's wearing a lovely headdress? Our third error is number 3. So they didn't use an alphabet like us. Yeah, we learned, didn't we, that they used hieroglyphics, and that was their way of writing using pictures. So one picture might be represented by 1 or 2 letters, or even a whole word, which I think is quite a cool way of writing. Our fourth error in the picture is down here, which I'll show you in the colour. Actually, it's easier to see. So if you have a look there, this man is carrying a book, and during the ancient Egyptian civilization, they didn't have books like we do now, and they used that papyrus, which they'd scroll up to make these scrolls here. So these bits are correct, but they wouldn't have had these books, which I think is quite interesting. Then our fifth error, where are we? Over here. So if you have a look closely, you might notice that that farmer, think about what is he using there? So he's using a hose to water his plants, his crops. So farmers didn't use a hose for watering their crops, but they built a system of canals to help irrigate the dry land, to raise the waters of the Nile from one level to another. Okay, so it's basically almost like flooding one part of the area to produce that moisture in the soil for those crops. So no hoses back then. Number 6 is, let me have a look, up here. I'll keep it on this picture because I think it's a bit clearer. So number 6, it would be you'd have to be very closely looking at this one. So this is an oak tree, and you wouldn't get an oak tree growing in a climate like in Egypt. Okay, so their hot, dry climate would be more suitable for trees like palm trees, definitely not oak trees. Then our 7th one, we're looking back up here. Again, looking at this farmer, thinking about what is he on? So he's sitting on a tractor. Would they have had tractors in ancient Egypt? I don't think so. Okay, so definitely no tractors, and they would use ploughs that would be pulled by an oxen. So if you have a look over here, this is the proper way that they would have done it back during ancient Egyptian times. So probably more hard work for the farmer, rather than sitting on his tractor, he's having to control these animals, these oxen, to help the get the land ready to grow the crops. And let's have a look. Number 8, our 8th error is, let me have a look, over here. What is this man using? He's using a fishing rod. Do you think they would have had fishing rods like this, with a nice reel on the end to help catch their fish? No. So they would have to use a net like this, okay, rather than a fishing rod. Or they might have used a line and hook, so just a very simple fishing line with a hook on the end, but nothing as modern as our fishing rod here that some of you might have been lucky to use before. Number 9, so our 9th error is down here. So he is using a tape measure. Do you think they would have had tape measures 5,000 years before, well, 5,000 years ago, 3,000 years before Jesus was even born? No, so they used to use ropes, just a simple rope to measure their crops rather than a tape measure, and measuring the crops would help determine how much tax a farmer would have to pay the Pharaoh. And our final error, if you have a very close look here, so that is a flask that some of you might take out on a picnic to have a nice cup of tea or nice hot chocolate after a cold walk. So they definitely didn't have a flask like us back in the times of ancient Egypt. And if you have a look next to it, what do you think this container is made from? So it is a pottery container, and they would use that to carry water and wine and beer. So definitely no flasks for them. So well done if you managed to spot all of those 10 errors. Some of those were a bit tricky. So for your task today, what I'd like you to do is create a mind map about just those small initial things that you've learnt about ancient Egypt. So we have given you a template like this that you could use, but if you'd prefer to make your own, make it colourful, you can do that too. Up to you, as long as you've got those initial facts on there about ancient Egypt, you can present it in any way in which you prefer. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Obviously it's just a snippet of what we're going to be learning about this term, and I'm so excited. I hope you are too. Have a fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing all your mind maps and posters on your class dojo. See you later.